Officer down! I repeat, officer down!
Welcome back to 1033. This is your host, Nathan Kapler, a podcast created for a first responder by a first responder. If you are not a first responder, you still are welcome. This podcast is aimed directly at trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD is complex and often misunderstood. Our brave men and women who serve our communities often end up with behavioral and psychological issues as a result of experienced trauma from their careers. My goal is to share what I know, my personal experience with PTSD as a retired police officer, and continue to advocate for mental health while providing support to those still in their careers. This podcast is not a substitute for professional medical help, and I strongly suggest if you are in fact suffering, you seek out professional medical advice. Please join me on this episode as I continue to expose the reality of PTSD challenges. I hope you enjoy this week's episode. Welcome back to 1033. This is your host, Nathan Kapler. I am absolutely pumped today to bring in not only a guest, but someone who has become a friend and an ally in this journey of mental health and advocacy work. Sachin Latti comes to us with 17 years first responder law enforcement experience. He is a dog handler. He has been through it all. He is on his own journey with mental health and making sure he stays healthy. In the process of this journey, he has committed himself to running across Canada in 2025. This is no small feat. At the same time, he's actively engaged in raising money, raising awareness for the Honor House. And by the end of 2025, he is hoping to have raised over $1 million to give back to this community. Such an honor to have you on this podcast. Welcome, brother. How are you?
I'm awesome, man. Thanks, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Dude, I mean, there was no way that I wasn't going to have you on, knowing who you are and knowing what you're doing. And this is exactly what the world needs. The world needs more people like you, brother. People who just, they approach this topic with the care and compassion that it deserves. And you're on this beautiful journey too, because I'm watching you out here in BC right now. You're growing, you're challenging yourself in ways that I don't think a lot of people recognize they need to. And you've become someone for me, even for myself, that I look up to you already.
Wow. Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and that's the honest truth, dude. I have a ton of respect for people that serve their communities in the law enforcement first responder role. You did just that. You became slightly lost along the way, much like we all do, but you're finding yourself again.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, man.
Yeah, so outside of, this monumental feat of running across Canada and raising all of this money for mental health and doing the advocacy work, I wanted to connect today about mental health and what it looks like for you. And I think a good place to start is probably if we start maybe back at your childhood so people can kind of understand who you are and how you got to this place.
For sure, man. Yeah. So I grew up in an immigrant household. My parents immigrated to Canada from England, actually. So my dad, both my parents were born in India, and my mom left India when she was about 11 and moved to England, and my dad left India when he was 19 and moved to England to go to university. So eventually, my brother was born in England, and they eventually immigrated to Canada, where I was born in London, Ontario. And so growing up in a Indo-Canadian immigrant family, culturally is a bit different than growing up in, your Western Canadian family, I suppose. I grew up in London, Ontario, so I was probably one of the few people of color in the area 40 some odd years ago. So naturally, there was some racism that we experienced. My parents and then me and my brother growing up, seeing various different things. Also, I would suspect that a lot of my behaviors that manifested through my career were partly created in childhood. So like my parents were fairly strict, and my dad was, he was like a typical Indo-Canadian cultural family where, let's see, discipline is rendered with their hand rather than vocally, or a combination of all of it, right? So, needless to say, there were occasions where I learned some lessons that weren't very pleasant. And now, having said that, if you were to talk to my parents now, they would be like, they would recognize the folly in their ways at this stage in the game. But mind you, they're almost 80 now. But as a kid, my dad did have some drinks from time to time, and from time to time he wouldn't be pleased with my brother and my behaviors, so he would let us know. So that created a level of fear throughout childhood, right? And so I acted in a way that was very timid. I was like really isolated. I kind of like stayed myself. And then, growing up in school, elementary school and middle school and things, and, I was always picked on, right? I was the only minority in my class, so that didn't turn out so well. And then, you make friends and whatever, but then you're like the black sheep out amongst your friends because you're the only brown kid, so you get treated like shit for many years. And then, anyways, so I moved to Dallas when I was about 12 years old. My dad got transferred to a company. My dad was an electrical engineer. He got his master's degree in University of Wales, Cardiff. First person in his entire family to be educated at that level. First person to ever get a master's degree in his entire family, like whoever it was in that entire family. So, we had a bit of, both my brother and myself, my dad would always remind us of the opportunities that we had being in this country. And he would remind us how useless we were from time to time for not taking advantage of them. Because he was a person who tried to take as much advantage of the opportunities that he had, right? Like he didn't have much. He struggled quite a bit and made all the sacrifices for both me and my brother, and we saw that. And, from time to time, he wasn't in best form, right? But it is what it is. Anyway, so we immigrated to Dallas eventually when my dad got transferred to his company, and basically all over again. I got up, things were going pretty good when I was living in Toronto at that time when I was about 12 years old. And then from there, my dad emigrated, and, that was a pretty tough time for both me and my brother, and actually for the family altogether, because we were in Toronto and my dad was in Dallas at the time. And my brother was going through some of his own issues, like a lot of them, like, a lot of fights and a lot of getting jumped. We used to get our asses kicked by skinheads, like all this kind of stuff, right? So, that was a big sort of, my mom was trying to manage both of us, and it wasn't working out so good. So eventually we all moved to Dallas, and I went to high school in Dallas. And that was a culture shock and a half, because I was, again, you're starting off, you're doing okay, meeting friends and all that, and then you get uprooted, and then you go to an entirely different area where it's absolutely different. So for about 2 years, I was isolated. Didn't really have any friends for 2 years. Did my own thing. Relentlessly bullied in grade 9 and 10. Eventually joined the wrestling team, and even then I was pretty useless at that. I never played any sports, right? Not one. My parents didn't put me into anything, right? And if they did, it wouldn't last very long. So we moved to Dallas, and I was just like, I was a hot mess. I didn't know what to do. So then they put me on the basketball, tried to try out in the basketball team. That was a hot mess. I never played basketball a day in my life, and you got people in Dallas just fucking dunking in grade 9, right? And they were trying out for the team. I didn't make that team. So then my dad's walking me around school and talking to the guidance counselor, and the guidance counselor was like, well, we got a wrestling team, and the wrestling coach is a super nice guy. Why don't you go on that team? I was like, cool. I didn't know a thing about wrestling. So anyways, went on that team, and it turned out okay. I still didn't know what the fuck I was doing. But the wrestling coach was nice, and he was hardcore, and it went from there. And it was only until probably about grade 11, I'd say, that's when I actually started to make some friends. Actually, just one. His name, I still talk to him. He's actually in support the journey as well. But eventually, things started getting a little bit better. But I grew up in a household that was fairly strict. My parents were highly focused on making sure my grades were good, and then if they weren't, they would let me know in various different ways that I need to improve myself. But like most families, that's kind of how it is.
Did you? I mean, even just the fact that you share this, the clarity of looking at your own childhood, did you always look at your childhood this way? Or has it been something that in recent years you've kind of opened up your mind to seeing your childhood differently with maybe a different perspective? Can you speak about that?
Yeah, now I see it differently, right? I have a child of my own. My daughter is going to be 5 next month. And I don't raise my daughter at all like how my parents raised me, for a lot of reasons. I don't want to damage her. I mean, look, my parents did the best that they could at the time with the information that they had at the time, but they fucked up. If you look at it from a perspective, what's the role of a parent? So I look at a parent as someone that prepares their child for the next stage of life. Whatever that next stage is, the parent is supposed to prepare you for that. My parents didn't prepare me for a lot of things. They didn't. They were in survival mode themselves, so they didn't even know what the fuck to do. They were just trying to work. Look, and I don't judge my parents. My dad probably has PTSD. You got to also keep in mind that he's coming from a place, India. He witnessed atrocities. He experienced oppression. He experienced loss. His family had a great deal of land, and that was taken away from by the British. So it's, he's got blood memory going on, hundreds and hundreds of years of shit happening from that region. So I can't get mad at my parents. They just know, they don't understand trauma. And I'm starting to get it a bit more, right? So I don't blame my parents. Now, having said that, I have a different perspective now because I am a parent. I reflect back on everything and how it precipitated and created certain manifestations of my behavior. And I mean, if I weren't doing the work that I'm doing, people could say, oh yeah, that's horseshit, that's BS, blah, 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 whatever. But proof is in the pudding, right? I'm putting in some significant amount of work to ensure that my mental health is stable for both me, my family, my friends, and my community. And in doing that, I can see quite clearly significant improvements on every metric that you can measure as it relates to physicality and mental health. So it's not BS. It's like legitimately real. And you can compare me from a year ago. So let's say a year. Today's date's what? April 20th? April 20th. So it's 4/20. And if you were to look at a year ago, yes, a year ago, let's say last year, there's a significant difference. There's a significant delta between how I was then and how I was now. Now, if I were to just talk about my feelings, well, anyone can talk about their feelings and say they feel better. But if you were to objectively take out all the feelings and look at just objectively, improvements on every level have been made based on the work I've been doing and the engagement I've been doing and the connection I've been doing and the meditation I've been doing and the mind, everything. I've been using every sort of skill set or every sort of tactic to help improve my mental health. And it's working. I mean, it's realities. That's the truth. So anyway, I'll keep rambling if you let me. So I'm just you gotta.
You're not. That's the thing. You're not rambling at all. You're telling people exactly about your journey and how to get out of the place of PTSD, mental health issues. And I've watched you grow in this space. I mean, looking back at even when I first met you, which was a few months ago, the person that I first met for coffee compared to the person that you are now is night and day different.
Absolutely, man. But I mean, you're right. I don't even know. I'm not the same person a few months ago. Forget about a year ago. Forget about 2 years ago. Like mentally, I'm progressing leaps and bounds. It's weird. It's honestly very hard to explain and hard to articulate the clarity that's starting to come into view. Like, it's almost like you have a fog and clouds and they're slowly just kind of going away and things are becoming clearer and you understand things maybe a little bit better and you're not as emotional. I mean, look, I've been reading a lot too, right? And the reality is I've taken a step back. I have unplugged somewhat, and that's allowed me time to process all of my shit. All of it. Like, I'm talking 44 years of shit, not just 17 years of working in law enforcement. I had my problems before working where I work. My shit was way mangled in advance to working in law enforcement. But it got exasperated, it got compounded, it got worse without even me understanding that it was getting worse. And I was turning into someone that isn't who I actually am. I'm starting to see for the first time in my entire fucking life who I'm supposed to be, what kind of individual I am. And the reality is, I'm not meant to work in a certain environment. I'm only meant to work in other environments. So law enforcement, I think, isn't really the right career for me. I think I created that persona working there for 17 years. And through the trauma, you start building up walls and whatever the things are. I'm actually a very emotional, very empathetic, a very empathic person. I feel a shit ton, man. And if I were to just sit here and think about some things that happen to people, I'll probably start crying. Because I'm just tearing down some of those walls that I created, and I'm starting to become comfortable with the person that I'm becoming, even though historically I would have had issues with showing my emotions to the extent that I'm showing them. But I'm okay with that now, right? Like, I mean, for the longest time, when last year, like, I've taken time off of work because I'm focusing on the run, right? So last year when I was at work, I was wondering, like, I was always like very emotional. Like, I'd cry quite often, right? And I started asking myself, why the fuck am I crying all the time? Like, what the hell's going on here? Is something wrong with me? Like, I never used to do this. I never used to be this emotional. What's happening? And then when I started processing everything, I started realizing, and then I was like, whoa, wait a second. That's who I am. I'm an emotional person. Why am I fucking trying to get rid of it? It's all good. Whatever. Now I can regulate it better now because I'm not in a trauma response, because for many years I was, but I'm able to regulate the emotions a lot better now because I'm not in that response all the time. So I've had the opportunity, months, let's say 30, 40 days, to process a lot of things. And then I'm also not just sitting by myself processing, I'm engaging with multiple people who have different perspectives who can help me understand and process my shit. So not just a psychologist, but people with those experiences, such as yourself, such as a Sean Taylor, such as a Seb Lavoie. Like, these are people I'm constantly trying to engage with, not to just to help myself, to learn, to progress. And part of the thing, or one of the issues that, I think there are places that people can improve how they function by trying to see if they can learn from other people with greater experiences in that realm, right? So for me, 6-7 months ago, I was actively looking for help. Like even a year ago, I didn't know what I was looking for, but I was looking for it. And a lot of people don't do that. So I knew there was something going on. I knew I needed help. I knew where I wasn't getting me that help that I needed. And not that they didn't want to, but they just didn't have the capacity or understanding of how to deliver that assistance, right? So I work in my workplace for 17 years. I've done pretty much every single thing that you can do in that workplace that you consider sexy from a law enforcement perspective, right? So I've done it all from that perspective. And I've learned a ton. I've learned from many mentors. I've learned from all kinds of stuff. But for me, working 17 years, I need to grow all the time. And then I got to a point where I wasn't growing. I was just sitting there doing sweet fuck all and just bored as shit. Like, okay, whatever, right? So then I started thinking, okay, well, I've exhausted all my people here, right? I'm not learning a thing now. So now I'm talking about my mindset too, right? So I'm taking a step away from the mental health aspect, but also mindset, how to grow, right? Like this is part of the growth mindset with my mental health. It's not just physical. I apply it with everything that I try to do. So if I'm trying to grow, how do I grow? If people around me, they're not fucking moving. They're not growing. So why am I wasting my time talking to you? Why am I wasting my time? Like, wait, let me correct that. If I'm trying to grow, I'm going to talk to you and speak to you. But if you're not trying to grow, I'll still talk to you. I don't want to sound like I'm not trying to listen to people or engage with people, but what I'm trying to say is that I'm not going to waste my time spending energy with people who aren't at least trying to develop themselves and develop others around them. And where I was working for the longest time, I felt like I had exhausted all the resources and I wasn't able to expand anymore. And I was hitting the wall and I was getting frustrated and I was getting irritated by that as well. So I was just searching for how I can grow. And 3-4 years ago, I engaged with Seb, and then through that, other things started happening. And then I met Sean, and I was actively looking for someone like Sean Taylor. I didn't know I was, but I was. And as soon as I found an individual that I could relate to, that could possibly assist, that could, that was willing to share some information to help guide me in a direction that might be beneficial for me and the collective, all these things, right? So like it happened by accident, but not really. I was actively looking for help. And now I feel very different than I had been, or I have in the past. Now I know what's actually going to happen, right? Like I'm going to run across Canada. All these things are going to happen. It's just a matter of how do we maximize our reach and how do we optimize our reach to affect and impact as many people as possible and to affect permanent positive change. So not just affecting positive change, but it's got to be permanent. So yeah,
you are
constantly growing.
You are absolutely right. And I just sit back and I just listen to you, brother, because you're doing the work. And when you do the work, you get to talk like this. And you get to think like this. And you get to set these kind of goals for yourself that, they're bigger than you. Because you're doing the work, you're removing yourself from the analogy of the frog in the pot of boiling water, where things got very hot for you and you were a very different person even then. So let's go back to that person that you were before where you're at right now, obviously. Now, at one point in your journey with PTSD and mental health issues and all of these things that surface in the law enforcement community, And you nailed it. You talked about how over time, it's like a death by 1,000 cuts, right? Like you eventually slowly change into a very different person in law enforcement. And there's nothing to say that it's a bad career. It's just, it's the environment. It's the things that you see and you're a part of, and the trauma and the stress and your childhood. And there's so many different angles to this that eventually it changes you into a person that eventually, if you can recognize that, you know, you're no longer happy with where you're at, your life isn't maybe moving forward the way you want it to, or you're stuck in PTSD mode where, you know, fight or flight is constantly engaged and you can't feel anything through the day. You have no emotional compass to you at all. And as human beings, we need that part of life in order to love and feel and live. That is the essence of life. It's not just the logic behind, you know, let's go to work and be a logical law enforcement individual. You have to feel life at the same time. And when you do that, you allow the spirit to thrive and grow. And there's so many elements to honoring all of the pillars that make up each individual person. And I'm sure you agree with this, but at one point you didn't have any of this. You were very angry. And I'd love to hear about that person as you reflect on who that person was and where that was in your journey and why you were the way you were and how you came out of the anger.
Well, anger is what? Anger is fear. Anger is pain. Anger is not able to articulate your emotions correctly, right? So what did I experience growing up most of my life? I experienced a lot of anger inflicted upon me, right? And look, I'm not making any excuses for any behavior that I've had. I've had poor behaviors and I've made poor choices throughout my life, like most people have. For me, I was never a flight individual. I was a fight individual. So I was taught that from my dad. And we used to have stories growing up of that. You got to fight. You're not going to get smashed, right? So I got to tell you a story. And this is like regular, this story. Like this shit happened often. So growing up, my brother's 3 years older than me, and he got worse than I ever did in terms of like, you know, corporal punishment from parents or any sort of ass whooping he got outside of the house. He got worse than I did. So I don't really blame him for being an asshole either, right? No, I shouldn't call him an asshole, but he's had his own issues, right? And I have compassion for my brother as well. He's probably seen a lot worse and experienced a lot worse than I have, so it is what it is. Now, having said that, my brother used to go when I was young, when we were really young. I mean, he was probably in grade school at the time, so I was 3 years younger. At the time, he was going to a Catholic school. Didn't really have many schools back where we were at. So he was going to a Catholic school, and it really didn't make any difference because back then public schools were reading the Bible in school anyway. So it didn't really make a difference. Anyway, he used to get his ass kicked every single day at school. Every single day at school. And he'd come home crying every day. So then one day my dad has PTSD. He's been jumped, like all this kind of shit, right? So it's like, I can see it now. And my mom has anxiety too. You can clearly see it. But my brother used to come home crying and whatever. And my dad would come and be like, what the fuck you crying? Like, what's going on? Why are you crying? And my brother would tell him, I'm just getting my ass kicked. He's like, okay, well, did you tell the teacher? And he's like, yeah, I tell the teacher. They don't do anything. And then, so eventually my dad's like, okay, cool. And my dad eventually took him to the store and bought him a lunchbox. He bought him a metal one. And then he said, the next time someone tries to touch you, before they even touch you, you smash them over the head with the metal lunchbox. So then a couple weeks later, my dad gets a call from the principal's office. and he goes to school. And my brother smashed the kid over the head with the metal lunchbox. And then he goes to the school, and the principal's like, "Hey, yeah, your son did this, that, and the other, whatever, right?" And my dad's like, "Yeah, I know." He's like, "What?" My dad's like, "Yeah, I told him to because you fuckers didn't do a fucking thing. He asked for your help, and you didn't help him, so I told him to handle it himself and smash the kid if he touched him again." Simple as that. So sometimes you also have to take things into your own control. Now, I don't agree with the method. Well, wait a second. As a parent, I probably wouldn't tell my daughter to do something like that. I would probably explain in a different way on how to manage the situation. But if it got to a scenario where she needed to defend herself, I would also articulate how to do that as well. But my dad obviously didn't go through those steps, right? So, that was like a typical sort of learning lesson, right? So, what do you learn from that as a kid, right? Like, okay, someone touches you, you smash them. Someone tries to scare you, you smash them. Someone tries to attack you, you smash, or anything, right? So there's a lot of protection, like you're setting up walls before someone even can kind of come into it, right? So I didn't really recognize that. And look, I didn't date a lot. I didn't do a lot of these things growing up in high school. A lot of shit was just kind of isolated, and I didn't really do much. I didn't hang out with a lot of people. Like, just, anyway. So that's kind of like a typical kind of instructional piece that my dad would give my brother, and I learned from that.
Preemptively striking.
Yeah.
Can be a very dangerous thing for a child, right? Your brother, for example, who had been exposed to being on the receiving end of violence, right, in the home. That's what it is. And now being taught to harness that violence, and at any moment when a threat is detected, you strike. You learn to fight. So, I mean, there was also actually something much deeper happening in that sense too, where now your parent figure, the person that's supposed to teach you how to de-escalate situations, how to regulate the body, how to approach these things, is saying, before you even get to a place where the body has totally picked up on a threat, you smash someone. Don't let anyone touch you. You know what I mean? So you're almost now setting up this. You're also setting up this door for walking through fight or flight response much earlier than it even needs to happen.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. And then I learned that even from my brother growing up. He would get in fights a lot, right? And he was also smaller. So like, he's like, I'm not a massive guy, but I'm bigger than my brother is, right? And I've always have been. So he was also smaller. So he would take advantage of that. People would, like, there were a lot of people try to pick on him. He would smash them before they even hit him. He would just punch him first. So like, but then he would talk about these things. And then I was like, oh, I want to be like my brother. It's like, you know what I mean? So, anyways, it was a very, I mean, I don't know, at the time, probably not the best way to teach, I suppose, right? And my parents would probably agree with it. Like, and not too long ago, a few months ago, I'm working on my resentment with family, right? I do have certain resentments that, from time to time, that are just intrinsic within me. It's hard to control it. It just is. It's there, right? So I was talking to my dad a few months ago, and I wasn't very nice. Usually I'm super respectful, but like lately it's been not so much. And he mentioned to me, he's like, what's your problem? Why are you so angry? And then I was like, oh, okay. And then I was just like, okay, I'll tell you. It was about an hour, like 30 minutes of me just giving him like a fucking shit sandwich. And I mean, obviously I felt bad after, but it felt good telling him. It felt good explaining why I'm angry. And it was good to explain to him what he needs to be aware of and the actions that he took, how they affected people. So it's not like, oh, hey, yo, yeah, I'm divorced, but I fucking got no house and I've lost all this, that, and the other, and money, this, that, and the other. It didn't happen like just whatever. Like there are pieces that kind of contribute to that, right? So I wanted to just let him know that, hey, you have a hand in this. A little bit, but there's a hand there. And I wanted to also explain to him, I go, hey, listen, I want you to understand, if I were to treat my daughter the way you treated me, how would you like it? And he had no answer. Like, because he knew, like, he's not stupid. He's a smart man, and he's a good man, very good man. He just didn't know how to respond with the stressors he had at the time. He was a new immigrant into a country that had no money. He was trying to figure out how to get a fucking job. He didn't even know how to, like, you know what I mean? Like, these are things, like, I get it, man. Like, just imagine the stress that an individual that comes to a country that doesn't even have any friends, that gets treated like garbage from other companies trying to get hired. Like, you have a weird name. Okay, wait a second. We're not hiring you, right? Even though you may have all these credentials. So I get it, right? So I don't have any ill will toward my family or parents or anything, but I just wanted to express to them, hey, this is why I'm acting in this manner. This is why I'm saying these things to you. And I also wanted them to understand, look, this is also emotional that I'm saying these things. So take it with a grain of salt too. I might say some shit that might just come out of anger, but I might not actually mean it. So I've also had those conversations. Like, I'm straight up, like, I love my parents. I really do. And they've done the best that they can. And they still continue to support me, and they still continue to help. So, like, I'm not shitting on them whatsoever. I just am making an observation, and I'm making an astute one where I can understand certain behaviors that I have, and in understanding those behaviors, then I can correct them. If I don't acknowledge it, I can't correct it. If I don't recognize it, I can't correct it. Like anything, if you're overweight and you need to get into shape, what do you need to do? You need to understand what you're eating. You need to understand the calories that are going in. Like, that's just basic. So anything that you do, anything, you have to understand everything. Otherwise, there's no point.
They call that awareness. And I love how you approach your situation with such awareness now that shows me that you're able to move beyond the anger and see your parents for their experiences, for the struggle that they have, and give them the compassion that they still deserve to this day, right? Trauma is multi-generational. Like, when people talk about this on TV, a lot of people kind of dismiss it and they go, no, trauma's not multi-generational. It doesn't translate down through the family. Absolutely it does. Take your dad, for example. How much stuff had your dad been through to the point where he now came home and he had this distorted view of how to be a parent? Guaranteed at this stage of the game where he's now 80, if he looked back knowing what he knows now, he would shift the way he was as a parent wholeheartedly. He would understand. 1,000%. Right? We can both agree on that. And that's the part. I mean, we slightly lose perspective in touch with where we are in this journey in life. We're allowed to do that. You're allowed to be that person. You're allowed to go there, but you're not allowed to stay there. And that's always kind of the theme that I bring forward to mental health is you're allowed to fall apart. You have every right and the reason in the world to fall apart, but eventually you are going to have to challenge yourself and start making some very real changes and start to accept things that you might try to deny. So for you, you painted a very good picture. What did your anger look like when you were at work? Are you able to talk about that at all?
Yeah.
And
so
how
it wasn't so much.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So it would be like, how do I explain this? So, like, I'm a hard charger, right? And I can understand how it could be to work around me if you're not at the same level, right? And I operate at a higher intensity. And for some people, that can be a little bit difficult because, especially working in the federal government, some people may not have the idea of a meritocracy in their head and earning their way, right? So I've grown up with that mentality. I got to earn my shit. Now, going into the federal government, maybe not the best idea for someone like me. Now, having said that, and I'm not saying anything about anyone negative. Other people, just like anywhere you go, there are different types of people. Some people might think I'm a piece of shit just because I'm too intense and too passionate and too hardcore and whatever. I get it. I'm not for everybody. Cool. And I was working around some people that I felt could have done a bit more. Now, having said that, wasn't my responsibility to tell them that. It was a supervisor. So what naturally happened to me is I would see incompetence, or I would see things that needed to get improved, or I thought they needed improvement, and I thought certain things, and I would take action, and maybe I didn't need to take action, or other people have already taken action, or whatever, right? I just was at such a high response level. Like I was like honestly just in a trauma response a lot of times, that any little irritation, I would like just get angry or upset. Now I would contain it, and I would be able to tell that it triggered. So obviously I'm fairly fit, and I keep track of a lot of my metrics. I wear different sort of things that tell me where my heart rate is and all that. And there would be times where I would have a PTSD response, and just standing in place, talking to a person or talking to a colleague, and not moving, I would burn 400 calories in about 20 minutes, right? So that's my response. So I'm just standing there trying to contain it. So it's very hard, very hard. So over a period of time, it would get hard to contain it. And then it would be like a pressure cooker. So then I would have a release, and then it would go back down. I'd be fine. And I only recognized that because of a colleague saw that. It was astute observation. He go, bro, I know you're good. You're not even angry at anyone. You just need to release it, and then it goes down, and you're good. So it's not even I'm hating on anyone. It was just so much energy. It was just I had to fucking let it out. Otherwise, it would have imploded on myself, right? So I needed time away to process that and figure that out a bit more. Now, you know, working in law enforcement, like many people who might be listening to this, most of my irritations were moral injuries and things that I recognized in the workplace that I thought and that I know need to be improved. So it was out of that passion to serve the collective that I may have acted in ways that probably wasn't ideal to ensure that I would have everyone on the same page. But giving myself enough time to reflect on that, I see it. And I'm not perfect, and I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to do things better. I'm trying to learn from my mistakes, right? And move forward in a positive direction. Could I have, over the last few years at work, could I have done things better? For sure. Like anyone else, anyone can do things better. Was my heart in the right place? Absolutely. Was my intention perfectly clear and integrity there? Sure. But could things have been done better? Yeah. I mean, anything can be done better. I can run better.
This is part of the journey. We can always do things better, right? Don't live in the past with your mistakes. Take your mistakes though, learn from them and move on and create something better, right? We're allowed to make mistakes in life. They are the best teacher in life.
Yeah, you know what, man? I feel very fortunate and blessed and honored and all the things that you can say to find myself where I am at this moment in time in life, and knowing very within myself that I'm on the right track. I'm on the right path. And I am very confident and secure in myself now that I don't need much stuff, man. Like I am perfectly happy with downsizing all of my stuff so I can commit my entire life to doing what I'm doing. Like it's simple, man. I don't need to. I know there are people in law enforcement that love it so much and that's who they are. It's not me. I recognize it now, and I'm happy for everyone who recognizes that if you're in law enforcement, whatever you're doing, that's meant for you, then awesome. I'm so happy for you that you got it. And I'm just on my own journey trying to find what makes me happy. And I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I applaud you. Many of us, I think, we're hit with forks in the road, right? Where we finally decide, I no longer want to do it this way. And you finally give yourself the choice and a position where you can now challenge fear head on and go, okay, this isn't working for me anymore. It doesn't serve me anymore. And I think it's really important for each of us to take that seed that you're giving right now, that gift, and at least acknowledge that there will be points in your journey in life where you are given that opportunity to embrace change, to tackle the fear that you have about going left or right, right? There's so many opportunities, and you really have to ask yourself, what do you want out of this journey in life? There's no shame with staying in law enforcement. You've painted a very clear picture of that. And there's no shame with saying, hey, you know what? I thank you for everything, but I'm done. I need to do it differently now. I like the way I am right now. I'm going to do it this way. Thanks for everything. And there's nothing wrong with either of those things. This is your journey. If we can learn anything from these moments, because a lot of people too, I'm sure, are looking at you and they're like, hey, like, why are you leaving law enforcement? You get such a great pension. You're not at 20, 25 years yet. You must be suffering. No. You're looking at growth. You're looking at finding who you are.
Yeah, man. I'll tell you exactly. I'm excited. I can't wait. Look, I don't need money. I've already figured it out. Like, I don't need a shit ton of money. So as soon as I remove that element, I'm out of the rat race. I just want to go into the bush and run around and maybe like do some mindfulness and then maybe go talk to someone over here and have a coffee. And if I have anything that I can share that might help someone just a tad bit, and in those conversations they see something that might help me just a tad bit, then I'm doing that all day, every day. I don't need a ton of money. I don't. So now with this mindset, will money come my way, or will security, or will other things come my way? Perhaps, and most likely, yeah. But I am not going to make my decisions based upon that. I'm making my decisions based on what's the best for the collective and for me through that, right? So if I was meant to be an elite athlete. Now I know that now. At 44 years old, I was meant to be in the Olympics. I was meant to do fucking something amazing physically, but that wasn't in my cards, right? At the age of 44, in under 2 years, I've trained myself to run 100 kilometers. That's unheard of. I've trained myself to do a shit ton of things. Now, and that was under all the mental circumstances I was dealing with, all the shit, right? Now, if I was 10 years old with none of those issues, and then all the focus and the physical capabilities I have now, and all the attention, I fucking 100% I would have got a gold medal somewhere in the Olympics or something, wrestling, whatever it is. I don't know. But I wasn't mentally in the right spots at those times. Now I feel like I'm becoming who I should have been, and I'm fucking 44, man. Like, it's only really been 2 years of me developing my mental state. And that, watch, like, me developing my mental state now, I'll break a record to run across Canada. Like, are you kidding me? Or at least try my hardest to get there. So what's that going to tell me? If I'm trying to break the record in 65 days, well, okay, if I don't do that, the record really right now is 72 days, 10 hours. If I train for 65, I'm going to get 72. And then if I get 72 days, that's 7,400 kilometers in 72 days. That's 100 kilometers a day. I wasn't running fucking 10 kilometers 3 years ago. Anything is possible if you put the fucking effort to do it. And I'm proving it right now. It's in real time. I'm not special. I'm putting in work. I've unplugged for 3 years. I've been focusing on my mental health, not my physical health, my mental health. And through that, I'm able to see that I can fucking do anything. Now I'm watching Nims die. He's inspiring me now. And if I see him, he's no different than me. I can do the same shit. And now it's becoming real. Now it's a real thing. Now other people are jumping in. Now I'm actually believing it. A year ago, I was just imagining it. I was faking it till I made it. I was behaving my way to success, whatever you want to call it. I was imagining it. I didn't really believe it. Now I believe it because I got companies starting to knock on my door. I got people starting to engage now. And this is all, we were doing this when no one was paying attention. Not a single soul. Not a single person. Even to this day, I have people that are my friends don't fucking call me. I got to this day that people that are my friends for 17 years don't fucking give a shit about what I'm doing. For 17 years, I have people that haven't donated a fucking dime to what I've been doing. So anyways, I don't want to get angry about that. It's not about anger. It's about recognizing it's about recognizing where the energy is going and where I need to put more of my energy. And if my energy is going to areas that it's a waste, well, I'm not going to put it there anymore. I'm going to devote that energy into where it's getting maximized and people are able to receive that energy. So that's where I'm putting it. I'm not putting it and wasting it. I have something that I'm trying to give. And if I'm going to do that, I'm going to do it the best of my ability. And if I can run across this country and raise $1 million to help other people, I'm fucking doing it. And then afterwards, we'll see what happens.
I love your passion.
Yeah,
you know
sorry,
what?
Man, I get passionate.
No, it's all good. Like some people are going to listen to this and they're like, whoa, that guy just got really angry. And I give you space to do your thing and let the passion out because I get where you're coming from. I'm just going to help kind of redirect kind of what you touched on in there in the end, because it is very, very important in this journey as we try to challenge ourselves and deal with maybe some of the anger, the way we view the world. We go through an identity crisis when we leave policing. The family that we had that was standing behind us, which was the law enforcement community, and we had the brothers and the sisters and all of those people there for us. While there may be, we can talk about this later, unhealthy boundaries even in that. It's a workplace, right? We don't need to have that, but we do. There's a very much a camaraderie that stands behind us, and we care for our brothers and sisters, and we'll give our lives for that, and we always will. That's just the way we're wired. But in my own experience too, I saw a shift in now that, like, especially that I jumped into podcasting, there's a lot of people that are like still supportive of what I'm doing from the law enforcement community. And then there's the other side of the coin. I've gotten a few texts where they're, people that I consider to be very close, supportive friends now are like, hey, hold on, we're not cool with what you're doing. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I get that you're still in that frame of mind of maybe not wanting to acknowledge, maybe some of your own personal challenges that you have in life. And denial is a much easier road for you right now. That's cool. I support you. It doesn't mean that we have to connect all the time. The friendship is still there. I still care for those people, but a lot of times I don't connect with them as often. But in this journey of self-growth, and this for a fact, the people that you surround yourself are so vital to your success. So eventually you have to make a choice to walk down a very lonely path in life in order to grow. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, and it's just part of the game. It's just part of the game. Like there's no anger there. There's no hatred. I think you and I can both accept kind of the fact that, the people that we cared for, that we thought would be on the outside supporting us for what we're doing, maybe aren't there. That's okay.
And you know what? And I'm not angry. What that is so wait, let me clarify. I tap into it sometimes. So for me, I use it as a tool sometimes now, right? Whereas I can kind of a little bit control it, and I can kind of recognize when it's starting to bubble up, and I can kind of control it and use it, right? So for example, we went to that mental health walk the other day, right? And a lot of people were looking at me and they were saying, "Oh, you look like you're just chomping at the bit. You're just like, you just need to go." Like you could almost see that I was ready. I wanted to go for a run, right? And we were going for a walk. So we were going for a 90-minute walk in Golden Years Park to help with well, we have a little community that we're trying to, join, and we're trying to go on these nature walks and just kind of relax and hang out with each other, right? And but for me, I had scheduled a 20 to 30K trail run right afterwards, and I was having a great time on the walk and everything. But then I started getting excited, and then I started talking to some people, and then I was tapping into that passion, that anger, that whatever you want to call it, and I use it to kind of get me fired up, to kind of get going. So now I kind of recognize where that is, and I can tap into it from time to time. And so what I do now is on these really long runs and these really long, lonely running events, there are different times where I need to tap into different coping mechanisms or strategies to ensure that I can keep moving. And one of them is to use these whenever necessary, like the passion or the anger, and just kind of tap into it, and then I can kind of use it to kind of keep moving and then go again. Or and that's one of the things that I would do. Or like I was another time, like when I was running that 48, the Goggins sort of 4x4 48, the second day I was getting kind of just tired, and I needed a little bit of energy, so I selected a certain type of music that I hadn't listened to in over 10 years. And I just kind of used that to kind of drive me a bit more. So like whatever sort of coping or skills that I need to apply during any one of these things, I kind of pulled them out of my toolbox. And the anger, the passion piece is one of them that I use. And to be fair, I got to get better at it. I'm starting to use it a little bit. So when I use it now, it may come off as a bit aggressive, but I'm still trying to figure out how to use it correctly. So a few more times of tapping into it, I'll have a better understanding of how to utilize it, so I'm not as aggressive when I'm expressing it. That makes sense?
You've got 44 years behind you of doing life a certain way. If people cannot look at you and say, you know what, I'm going to give you a little bit of time to work on that one, then they don't understand where we're at and the level right? You know what I mean? And that's a very beautiful topic within this conversation too, is, how long does it take to undo the damage that has been done, right? Like if you now just at 44 are waking up and you're going, holy, like this is my past. This is the yarn of trauma that goes all the way back to childhood, and you've got to unravel it all. Could you articulate that it could take you just as much time in life to unravel it all? 44 years. Now your goal now is committed to unraveling that yarn, and it's going to take you plenty of time. It's not going to take, I guarantee you, it's not going to take you 44 years to unravel it. Because at the speed you're moving, you're very quick. But that's what it can look like. I can remember years into my policing career too and going, holy Jesus, like I felt cooked after 10, 12, 13 years of trauma. And then I retired at 14, right? And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, how long is it going to take for me to heal? Because I had reached out, I think, right around year 6 or 7 to get like actual help. And I was like, I fully embraced this. Okay, I have something going on, right? The post-traumatic stress. I was diagnosed. And I started to dive into how do I come out of this place or deal with it or learn how to navigate it. It takes time to unwind all that stuff, and there's no shame in that. For sure. Right?
No, for sure. I appreciate that, man. Thank you. And I don't want I don't want to run the risk. I want to be as authentic and honest and transparent as I possibly can anytime I talk on a podcast or anything. So I may come off raw, right? And I am. I'm not I'm a raw person, right? And I'm that's who I am, right? Like, so I'm not trying to be anybody I'm not. And so like, people, and at the beginning of this journey, I was kind of trying to be someone I wasn't. I was trying to figure out who to be, and the reality is I'm just going to be me. And I'm not a Goggins, right? I'm not a Cam Hain. I'm not any of these people, right? Like I'm just who I am. And I'm just trying to use my skill sets the best I can. And I just want to do positive things for a community. That's it. It's pretty simple. It doesn't require a PhD to figure me out, man. I just want to fucking have fun, run around, and serve.
I've come to this realization too, and I don't say this because I'm claiming to be some profound guru in life. But as you get older, you begin to recognize in life that we all have an element to us where we want to serve others. Because when we serve others, we can connect with others, right? And we all want to serve our community in some way. It's just what hat or what costume do you want to wear? You and I have chosen the law enforcement hats, and that's totally cool. At the end of the day, there's lots of people out there who are accountants or doctors or dog walkers. They're serving a need for the community. Right? And there's a value attached and a cost attached to each position. And you eventually have to recognize in life that we're all wired that way. But our passion, our service for passion is very unique in that we're willing to go the lengths of being thrust into the trauma, the things that people would run away from. We're willing to run into it and embrace it and help those that specifically are in need. And even as I reflect even on my own journey too, because I'm kind of wired the same way as you, I think I knew pain and suffering very early on in life. And I didn't want anyone else to have to experience that, right? So I thought, what a beautiful platform of getting in as a police officer to help others not have to experience pain and suffering.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Right? Didn't quite recognize it at the time because the subconscious is wired so differently, right? We live our life kind of in that conscious realm, but once you finally tap into the who are you, why do you do the things you do, why do you make the choices you make, you start to go, oh yeah, there's a theme here, right? And it's
absolutely, man. It's a freeing feeling now. Honestly, it's very hard for me to explain, man. I feel so lucky. Like I feel
there's also a generation of people now that are claiming to be woke, right? The woke culture. You see that term all the time in social media, and you have to be very careful with that because I think there's a fake woke and then there's a real woke, and both walk a very different path. The path that you are on is a woke that I would kind of identify even for myself. I'm walking that path alongside of you, no further ahead, no further behind. We do this together. That's how I do it with you and a few of the other boys, right? And that's, you need to lead from that space. Yeah, right? You need to take people with you and support them. And the very beauty of finally waking up one day and recognizing the monster that you may have become in PTSD, you can now challenge it head on and switch into becoming someone who can harness those energies and take those energies and use them for good now and not for destruction is very important.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's where I come in as a different individual, maybe, or I come in as a somewhat not unique, but just a little bit different in the sense that I have a force multiplier mentality. So what does that mean? When I run across this country, it'll create such a galvanization of communities that it will affect permanent positive change. And that's what a force multiplier does, right? Like, I'm going to ensure that I do everything in my power to execute within my power this run on such a level that it affects almost every single person in this country. And I'm saying almost, maybe next year, I'm going to say every single person in this country to some degree. How many people watched the gold medal hockey match that Sidney Crosby got a goal in? Every fucking person was watching it. If you were to find the ratings, 30 million people were watching that hockey game. Who fucking cares? Right? If we can generate $1 for every person in this country for mental health and PTSD and first responder or whomever, like whatever the cause is, that's way more important than a hockey game, man. You know what I mean?
I do, and this comes from I believe this kind of comes from the space of the service life that we lead and the cost that comes from the sacrifice from having to serve. Right, we quickly realize that, and I get asked this question all the time. They're like, "Hey, Nate, do you watch hockey? Hockey, for example, right? We're on the topic of hockey," and
Sure.
I'm like, "No, I don't." I just couldn't be bothered. It's entertainment. And while I'm happy that you can watch hockey, that's great for you, but I'm working on something different, something bigger. I think for myself too included, like there's a lot more value in the things that I feel I need to chase instead of sitting down and watching hockey. Hockey is great. I mean, go watch hockey, enjoy your comfort, enjoy your drinks, enjoy your whatever, right? But at the same time, you're also logging your life and you're spending your time on that. And if you do that for an entire lifetime and you spent thousands of hours on it, I would also argue too, why have you not stepped into embracing that you could have that growth as well outside of sitting down and having comfort and watching hockey? I've got nothing wrong with sports. Love sports. I think they're fantastic. But you also have to ask yourself too, why are you not committed to growth? Why are you?
Well, that's an awesome question because a lot of people aren't, right? So they want to use that time to watch a movie, watch TV, watch Netflix, watch a hockey game, whatever. And look, I like watching shit too. I watch UFC or MMA or whatever you want to say. I like to enjoy watching sports, but that's the last thing I do once everything else is accomplished or executed. I have a schedule every single day. Every single day. If I were to show you my calendar, you'd be like, holy shit, bro. I got morning workouts, afternoon workouts. I got podcasts. I got coffee. Like I got this. I got that. I got this. I got that. And I wouldn't change it for anything else. Like I honestly love doing every moment, every second, every opportunity that I have to talk about what we're doing. I'll take it. I don't even care if one person hears it. I don't honestly don't care. No. I want to speak to as many people as possible. I want to engage with as many people as possible, just so I can feel better. Shit, man. Like that's a selfish reason for me. I want to meet people so I can learn. Like talking to people like you, like I want to learn from you, the way you speak on the mic and how articulate you are and how, you know, all these things, they're things I can learn from, right? And then if I'm sitting with Seb, I can, shit, man, I don't know, like a list of things I can talk about in terms of like how Seb is able to execute certain things and how he thinks and you know, how I'd want to be able to at least learn a few things from that. And then with Sean, I mean, shit, like I would align myself quite closely to Sean. At least he thinks on such a different level than me, but I think somewhat like him. So that's why I'm gravitating so heavily towards him, because I just, the way he speaks, it just resonates with me. And so, of course, I'm sitting down listening to these people and understanding and then applying what they're teaching to me, or at least guiding or suggesting, and applying it in my life. And if it works, cool. If it doesn't, well, I get rid of it and try something else. And maybe through that, I figure something else that works for me. And maybe I can share that with someone else, and someone else has never heard of that thing before, and whatever. Or I express it in a way that someone else it resonates with them. Like I'm just trying to find different ways to be able to resonate with as many people as possible. Now, I know that's not going to happen because I just will not be able to resonate with everyone. It's not reality. But I can resonate with as many people as I can, and I can soften certain things and, you know, just learn how to do things better and apply my knowledge better. Like I'm learning from Sean, and also I've hired a running coach now. I've hired a nutritionist. I've hired all these people so I can start really learning, because running across Canada is going to be a whole, like, I'll probably write a book after, bro. Like, I mean, just from the knowledge of that I'm going to get from transforming my body into someone who's going to be running that much, like just that alone is a PhD, right? You know what I mean? So, like there are opportunities, like if I were to take a step back and just say, okay, what we're actually doing, there's opportunities just there of development and learning that I'm never going to have working in a certain type of career that I'm developing here, right? All, like, if I were to take the skill sets I'm learning right now and walk into a federal government law enforcement environment, I would be able to do what the commissioner is doing and be able to articulate all the competencies that they are doing based on the shit I'm doing. So why the fuck am I going to apply for a job that I can do right now? I can execute that job better, probably, based on like the experiences I'm developing right now. So why wouldn't I just maximize what I'm doing in this moment and just continue down this road and see what can happen? Like Jordan Peterson says, put in one of his books, I can't remember which one, he's like, try going all in something, see what happens. Okay, let's go. Let's see what happens. I'll tell you in 3 years how it turns out.
Due to the length of this episode, we're actually going to pause here for a break. We will come back for part 2 next week. Thank you for joining us on season 2. If you are a first responder with an incredible story into post-traumatic stress, please reach out and connect with myself. Season 2 is based on your story. And if you want to step up to the plate and share your story with the world, I would be more than honored to help you do that. Thank you for your continued support with this project, and thank you for tuning in today.